Good evening, everyone. My name is Justin. I'm the founder of LibertyHangout.org. Thank you for tuning in to our fourth ever Liberty Hangout podcast. And I'm joined today by our co-hosts Liam and James. What's going on, guys?
How much? Struggling in the state.
So, did you guys catch the Democratic debate last night? I know James had a pretty funny video he posted on his Facebook page earlier.
I caught the whole thing. I sat in that seat. I felt like I was watching the Knicks play because it was so sad, but it was a good time, and I got to experience from the other side of the lens because it's great to surround yourself with ulterior motives and perspectives. So I got to do that.
Did you play any drinking games?
No, I had to drink myself through it, so I was screaming by the end of my rant. It's pretty good.
What do you think of what they had to say exactly? Because I know Liam and I didn't catch much of it.
I mean, it's just the liberal talking points. I mean, don't talk about what actually matters. Talk about what the media wants you to talk about. I mean, you're a guinea pig, so you go straight into marijuana legalization and climate change. Like, those are really the biggest things that are affecting the country, when we could talk about every class of drugs that should be legalized, and economic freedom is being completely disregarded in this country, or the real reasons why minorities are affected in this country. I mean, they didn't want to talk about anything like that. They just wanted to stick to what MSNBC told them to talk about.
Yeah, I think it's pretty funny how they try to rail against the system that they created. Like the clips that I caught of Bernie Sanders, we need to take it to Wall Street. You do his impersonation a lot better than I do, but he tries to rail against Wall Street as if he didn't help build them up by raising the debt ceiling and killing the audit the Fed bill.
It's funny because last night was the first time in American history we had an openly socialist person on a presidential debate stage. And I thought that was a big step forward for the movement, because now we actually know who, and this is why I always like Bernie Sanders, no matter how much I disagree with him, is that he's not afraid to tell you what he feels. This is what I am. And you know what? Whatever. Now we can get down to brass tacks, and we can actually talk about issues.
Is he seriously the first open socialist to run?
I think he's the first one to ever make it to the debate stage.
You're probably right about that.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
What do you think about Bernie, Liam?
I think he's a demagogue, a lot like Trump. I mean, people kind of use their prejudices and kind of talk about that. And I mean, the same way that Trump talks about Mexicans, or Bernie talks about the rich, the 1%, the people that are doing well, people that might not like getting 30 to 50% of their money taken away by the government every year. And a lot of people like to blame something other than themselves for their mistakes, and that's exactly what they're doing with Bernie and Trump.
I think what's interesting, I know you mentioned how Trump is also another demagogue, and I would agree 100% about that. I think when it delves into their supporters, though, I think I may have a little more faith in Trump supporters, just for the fact that as conservatives, they do have some sort of understanding of basic economics, whereas Bernie Sanders supporters don't have any clue what economics is. Ask them what the Austrian business cycle is, they'll give you a blank stare. Ask them about deflation, they'll give you a blank stare. Ask them about any real economic topic, they'll have no clue. They'll just say, raise the minimum wage. I mean, at least your Donald Trump supporter is going to know that raising the minimum wage hurts workers and the economy. I don't think you're going to get any of that out of Bernie supporters. Otherwise, they wouldn't be Bernie supporters.
That is true, but I do think that a lot of Donald Trump supporters are it's when liberals talk about how stupid Republicans are, that's the guy they're following. Because a lot of them don't know about certain kinds of economics, like how a 10-foot wall at the border probably isn't going to do that well for our economy and things like that, and how
much it will cost.
Yeah, and how tracking down all the illegals in this country is going to basically turn this into a Nazi shithole. Things like that they don't really think about, because they just think, oh, freedom, oh, illegal, oh, all this other stuff. Yeah. And they just have a vastly incorrect definition of just about every word that they like to throw around.
Yeah.
So, yes and no. I agree and I disagree.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is that a lot of conservatives that are against immigration, they will say, like, they will rationalize it by saying, oh, they're coming here, they're using up all the welfare, blah, blah, blah. But when you look at the numbers, I mean, as much as all of us are against the welfare state and would like to do away with it, they're not really taking up much welfare. They're accumulating, what, like $200 billion in welfare when you account for all the 20 million. That's like $100 per immigrant. And
Yep.
you're talking about rounding them all up. Yeah, I mean, first of all, let's give people a trial. I mean, everyone has constitutional rights. If you're going to accuse someone of a crime, put them on a trial. So you're talking about paying all this money to round them up, give them all trials, build a wall. This is going to cost 100 times more than they're already accumulating in government wealth. So aren't they, in a way, the conservatives that want to do this? They want to put more government money towards these immigrants than they're already accumulating.
Definitely.
What do you think, James?
I get in arguments about this all the time, just about how, if anything, I want to start supporting illegal illegals in this country instead of having citizens. Because once they become citizens, then they become everything becomes available to them. All the programs, all the entitlements, the schools, the cell phones, and now with Bernie Sanders coming into power, or Hillary Clinton, or Donald Trump, who knows what kind of expansion this welfare state is going to have. And who knows what if they actually do become citizens, we're all now paying for it.
Yeah. I think what's interesting, what really boggles my mind is how a lot of Bernie Sanders supporters support Bernie because they don't support Trump. It's kind of like a lesser of two evils thing. They see Trump and they're like, oh, we can't let this happen. We have to get Bernie Sanders, and they're completely ignorant to the fact that Bernie Sanders has the same proposed immigration policies as Donald Trump.
Yep. And Donald Trump, actually, he hasn't really talked about it that much, probably for good reason. But not too long ago, I remember him releasing some kind of universal health care plan, within the last 2 or 3 weeks.
He's actually fairly open about it.
And it's funny because he's not a fucking Republican, but it's funny because, people like my grandmother, who is like an avid Trump supporter, like last election cycle, those same people were like, universal health care is bad. It was pretty like agreed upon. And then as soon as Trump, the demagogue, said that universal health care was a thing, then they were totally fine with it. And that makes me really scared because who else was a demagogue? Hitler. And who else was elected? Hitler.
Yeah.
And who else basically convinced people that things that were terrible are good? Hitler. And people call me crazy for making that assumption, but you got to understand, if you're giving people, your consent to blow up people and kill people and make new laws and all this other stuff, especially because of the precedent that President Obama has set. I mean, you have to think about that kind of stuff. So, that's why. I just find it kind of silly to even call Trump a Republican, because there are good things about the Republican Party, just like there are good things about the Democratic Party. But the crazy thing is, he represents none of the good things about the Republican Party at all.
Yeah.
I'll tell you why we're headed in the right direction for a complete change in the way of thinking, because if you look at who's leading the Democratic Party and who's leading, throw Hillary out of the equation for a second, you have Donald Trump and you have Bernie Sanders. The reason, what makes the appeal of Donald Trump is the fact that he's not going to listen to anybody but Donald Trump.
Yeah.
He doesn't need money. He's not going to be part of that system. No matter what he has, and this is why Republicans will support him, is because they're fed up with the Marco Rubios. They're fed up with not even Ben Carson, because he's an outsider too, but Lindsey Graham and George Pataki and Bobby Jin. They're fed up with these guys that take money and listen to the lobbyists and have to deal with all these influences.
Oh, he was originally attractive to me too. Seeing that.
That's what I'm saying is that's his appeal to people that otherwise would term themselves conservatives, is that, okay, well, maybe he'll be outside of this political agenda, because everybody's starting to realize it now, that this is an oligarchy that we're headed towards, if not already in. Yeah. So that's why Democrats are supporting Bernie Sanders, is because they're seeing the same thing from another lens, is that, okay, look at all these Democrats that are taking money and answering to lobbyists and how broken the system is. So they choose a guy like Bernie Sanders who says, you know what, fuck everything else, I'm going to do what I want to do, and I'm going to try to help. I mean, I really do think Bernie Sanders wants to help people, but he's just so wrong about the way he wants to do it.
I don't know if I would agree that Bernie Sanders wants to help people just for the fact that he's a career politician and he's been caught in many lies before. But tailing off of what you were saying, how people are fed up with it, I would agree. And like as scary as it is that people are supporting these very far-fetched demagogues, I think we have a lot of reason to be hopeful moving forward, just for the fact that people are sick and tired of it. Like they're sick and tired of the status quo. And I think perhaps after this election cycle, like look at Congress. They have the lowest approval rating in U.S. history. People know the gig is up. And so I think after this election cycle, when either, like let's say Sanders or Trump doesn't get elected, then people are going to be like, okay, the game's rigged. It's all nonsense. Or let's say Sanders or Trump do get elected and then they don't fulfill their campaign promises. Well, then people are going to agree that it's rigged. Something's wrong with it. So I think that we have reason to be hopeful and that people are finally waking up. They're just still clinging to the poor belief that you need a government and you need leaders.
Definitely, definitely.
And just to keep going off that is if you think about the only way government is able to be in society is through the social contract. If people start to see the social contract as illegitimate, you can draw conclusions now off moral principles that wouldn't make any sense to anyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And did you guys see the GoFundMe page that I created today?
Yep.
I did indeed. A few people saw it.
Yeah, I was pretty inspired. I mean, everyone always talks about getting Bernie Sanders to learn economics, and I was like, you know what? If we wanted to learn economics, why don't we pay for a class for him? So I was surprised no one else beat me to this. I just decided to go to GoFundMe, and I was like, hey, let's raise a little money, have Walter Block, Mr. Austrian Economics himself, teach him a course for $3,000. And so obviously there's no chance in hell that Bernie's going to accept this offer or maybe even hear about it, but this is going to be a great cause nonetheless because Bernie's always talking about feeding the starving children. So I found a great organization called Feed My Starving Children. So when Bernie doesn't accept this offer, we're going to donate all $3,000, if we make that much, to the Feed My Starving Children Foundation, which can feed up to 14,000 starving children.
Well, it's funny that what time did you post that at? Around 10 a.m., 11 a.m.?
Maybe about 12, 1 p.m. So
yeah,
we already got up to close to $100 in donations.
At 2:30, I got an email from Walter.
That's so perfect, man.
Yeah, asking me if I was a professor and basically just laying out the link for the page, and I thought that was funny that he saw it within an hour and a half, 2 hours of it being posted.
Yeah.
He looked excited, so.
So the wind is obviously getting around of it if it got to the man himself.
Liberty
I
Hangout.
just can't wait for it to get to Bernie.
Yeah.
Because you heard, who was it? I think it was Ben Swan. He tried to get together a debate between Rand Paul and Bernie Sanders, which
I heard about
would
that.
love to see.
They were going back and forth on Twitter.
And Rand Paul, when he was asked about it, without falter, said yes, absolutely, because he knows he's going to kick his ass.
Yeah.
But Bernie said, no comment. So that says enough. Dude, shout out to Stephen Nicalia. He donated $20. That's the biggest donation that you've gotten. That's pretty damn good.
I would just love to see a big donation from like Mises Institute.
Yeah.
Donate $1,000. I think we should send it to Tom Wood since he sent that book, Bernie Sanders is Wrong.
Seriously, that was hilarious.
Tom Woods loves grassroots organizations like Liberty Hangout.
What was that?
Tom Woods loves grassroots organizations like Liberty Hangout.
Absolutely.
I met him last year. He was a really cool dude.
Oh, that's great. Where did you meet him?
Actually at Auburn University at a Young Americans for Liberty convention. We also had a panel from everybody from the Mises Institute before then.
Yeah.
And then Tom Woods came out and said, what the hell was it? It was like 100, I don't even remember what it was, 100 statist logical fallacies in like less than 5 minutes or something like that. And then he's got like 6 or 7 kids, like a shitload of kids. And he said, he at the very end, he's just like, I really don't make a lot of money for what I do. So if anybody wants to help me out, I am selling my brand new book for a discount or something like that. And I ended up not having any money, but I came up and shook his hand and said, like, you're really cool. It was the first time I ever really heard of him. And,
Yeah.
at the time, I wasn't really...
ANCAP.
Well, yeah, I mean, not even so much. I just wasn't as involved as I am now. So it was really cool to see that, but it was such a bummer because I would have so many more questions for everybody that I saw if I did it again, so, which is good because it's happening again soon.
I actually stumbled upon Tom when I was a Bush supporter back in '07, and I was watching one of his videos, and I was like, this guy is retarded. I was like, I cannot.
What an asshole.
He's against the king. I can't believe he's saying things bad about Bush, my man. So, come to find out, a few years later, once I
everything comes full circle.
Yeah, Napolitano, Ron Paul, you got the whole thing, and I came back to Tom Woods, and I was like, oh, this idiot again. I can't believe he's in this. And I started reading. First thing I read was his book. I forget what it's called. It's on the Constitution, but it just laid it out so just eloquently because the man is so educated, and he has become really my role model in the libertarian movement to kind of copy because the way he debates, the way he goes at certain topics is just unparalleled. I think
well, it's all fact.
It's just so good. Like the man, he's so bright. I just love listening to him talk.
Yeah, and there isn't a logical fallacy in a single one of his sentences. Like
what I love a lot about Tom Woods is that in his podcast, whenever he brings guests on, he always plays devil's advocate, and I think that's so helpful to the conversation.
That's what I like about John Stossel. John Stossel was probably what John Stossel and Ron Paul during the 2012 elections kind of what turned me on to everything. But John Stossel has been like a really big input because he'll be on Fox Business and I'll be sitting there, with my stepdad and my mom and my stepdad screaming at the TV because he's like, oh, he's just a fucking liberal, blah blah blah. Because all of us, I feel like all of us probably have stereotypical Republican parents, but he what was it? Yeah, but I mean he'll play devil's advocate and he'll say like, okay, so what's up?
People like John Stossel, like Judge Knapp, they're a bridge between, the establishment Republican types who think they believe in a certain thing to libertarians because they have the face for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. And if anybody watching now wants to really hear an insanely good, I don't even know what you want to call it, monologue, Judge Napolitano, if you look up on YouTube, Judge Napolitano, What If?
Yep.
I'm pretty sure right after...
That's what got him fired. Him and Austin Peterson got fired because of that.
Yeah, I think right after that happened, he his contract didn't get renewed.
He was actually supposed to take over for Glenn Beck because that's when Beck was leaving to start his own company.
Yeah, and I never really liked Glenn Beck, and my dad always used to listen to him, and now my dad doesn't even listen to him so much. But he's become such a more positive person. He's really Christian, he puts that into all the stuff that he says, and he's still pretty establishment. But a lot of the things that he says are new to establishment Republicans, so I kind of respect him for that much at least.
You talking about Glenn Beck?
Yeah.
Glenn Beck, I've talked to Justin about this before.
Yeah.
Because I know Justin doesn't like him too much, but
No. I have a deep admiration for Glenn Beck. My mother is a huge fan of him, and I was a huge fan of him. I would watch him religiously every single day up until I became an ANCAP, and so I still have great reveration for him. I know he's a deeply religious man, and he tries to do what's right, and he tries to work out logical inconsistencies. I'll give him credit for that. Like he likes to see things through a logical perspective. He's a big uniter. I mean, even though he is still a statist, he loves uniting people. He doesn't care if you're liberal. He doesn't care if you're a conservative. He understands that unity and peace is what brings us together and moves us forward. And so for that, I do have a huge amount of respect for him.
Definitely.
Piggyback off that, when Mitt Romney was running, he was the man who came out and said that he was now no longer Republican. He said, I can't identify with this party anymore. If I'm any more libertarian-leaning than I am, I'm going to fall over. So when he said that, I was like, you know what, this guy's not too bad. At least he recognizes truth for what it is when he can. So I gave him the benefit of the doubt.
He did something that gave me a lot of respect for him. I used to hate him, but he did like a boxing match, and the dude's like 68 years old. He was in a boxing match for charity not too long ago. Did y'all see that?
Yeah, Romney. He fought
Like an ex.
Evander Holyfield.
Yeah, like it's crazy, y'all. James, you haven't seen that. You got to look that up after this.
I saw a picture of it, and I thought it was a joke. I was like, oh my god.
It was real.
Yeah, yeah, me too. It was pretty cool, man.
I mean, they didn't actually hit each other for real, but
the man is a multi-billionaire. I mean, he has so much influence and power. I actually worked for Bill Bain, who started Bain Capital, and
oh, really?
he has senile dementia. So Mitt Romney was really running that from the get-go, and I think that's awesome that he could start a company. And they had a lot of shady stuff going on, but the man is a businessman first.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they participated in a lot of the crony capitalist stuff. But now this is one thing that I might want to get on to is like a lot of people talk shit about Tesla, and Elon Musk has been on record saying that he's a bit of a libertarian. And a lot of people call him a hypocrite or call libertarians hypocrites for liking Tesla, even though, I mean, like if I'm not mistaken, he releases his blueprints online and all this other stuff, and he doesn't really seek that many copyright claims because he believes that, you know, just like Tesla, the namesake, he doesn't want it to just be, he doesn't want it to be like a monopoly, if that makes sense. But a lot of people say that, like, what, 20, 30%, something like that, of all the income that they get is straight from the government through grants. And I looked that up, and it's true. I don't know exactly what the number is. I'll have to do that in a second. But I almost find it hard to refute. But at the end of the day, if you're able to take the money, why the hell won't you? You know? Because you know, America, I believe, has the highest corporate tax rate in the world, if I'm not mistaken, if not one of the highest.
40%.
Yeah, so why wouldn't you take some of that money back? It's the same thing as people calling Ayn Rand a hypocrite whenever she collected her Social Security, but she's just getting the money back. I mean, if I stole $20 out of your wallet and tried to give you $3 back, I'm pretty sure you'd take it. You know?
There's a great debate on the Tom Woods show between Walter Block and Bob Murphy on whether or not it is just to take government money or to work at a government university. Great debate. I mean, I was going into it agreeing with Bob Murphy because he was arguing that it was immoral to work for the government and to take the government money. So I was going in with that mindset, and he made a great argument, and I was like, there's no way Walter's coming back from this. And then Walter Black just changed my whole mind with his argument, and I was like,
what did he do?
Say that again?
What did he say? I'm assuming that was later on in the podcast because I caught the first bit.
Yeah, because Murphy talked about, he said that basically, let's look at it like you're going to rob a bank, and what you get caught by the police, and you go into court, and you tell them, look, what my point is that I was doing it, I'm a libertarian, I'm a Rothbardian, and I was doing it because I knew the other guy that they were going to hire as the getaway driver, and he would have killed a lot of people. So what I did was I said, I'm going to drive safe once they get in the car, and you should be thanking me, you should be giving me a reward for this. And that was Bob Murphy's argument. And then Walter came back with, well, everything we do, if you can go in, if you could have a person infiltrate the Nazis and save 10 Nazis every day, or excuse me, save 10 Jews every day.
Save 10 Nazis every day.
Would you not? You could have somebody go in and infiltrate a system like that and either save people money or save lives or kind of change people's minds. You have a Nazi that goes in.
The NSA got him. You there?
I might have lost him. He'll come back at like 8 times the speed. That's what it usually does.
All right, so I think tailing off of his argument, he's trying to talk about that's actually a pretty interesting argument there, because when people get into ethics, I mean, we can kind of rationalize absolutes. We can take them to logical conclusions, but then you do come across situations like that where they'll be like, well, if someone puts a gun to your head and says, kill these people or kill those people, that's where those lines are blurred pretty heavily.
Exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, go on.
I'm not really sure where I stand on that, because a lot of people, at least in our community, say that it's not good to say, oh, I'm going to join this and change from the inside. Yeah. And I think that it's true for some professions and false for others. Like, it's true for a police officer's profession, because that's straight up violence right there. Like, I agree with that. But I think like if you're a professor at a government-funded school, things like that. I know a professor at this school that shares a lot of the same views as I do. And when he got hired, he wasn't really like that. He was just kind of like establishment Republican. And now he's leaning a lot more towards what I think. However, he said, okay, so if every person that had our train of thought didn't...
All right, James is back.
He said
there's two of you on the bottom there.
Oh, wow.
Give it to that one.
More to love. But basically what he said was like, you know, if everybody that thought the way that we did abstained from this, like abstained from being part of this system, and, you know, public universities are right now I don't even want to say the cheapest, but the least expensive way to further education. So many people going through it. And if every single person that went into a public university didn't have, totally lost it. I mean, if they didn't have the ability to see a different side, to see something that isn't statism or, you know, people that support the state, then, you know, they're only getting one side of the argument. So I agree and I disagree, and that's one of the positions that I would agree with.
Yeah, I think going off of what you guys were saying about taking money from the state, in Adam Kokesh's book Freedom, he writes in it, you know, it's not wrong to take money accept money from the state. He said any money that the state isn't spending on guns and bombs is money well spent. You know, it's better going to the people than going to destructive things that are going to murder innocents.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, and Hans Hermann Hoppe, in his he had an article during the summer where it was on LouRockwell.com, where he comes out with the reason why libertarians should be against illegal immigration, which was a new perspective for me, because usually libertarians are very open borders and natural rights and stuff like that, but he talks about how we're giving so much money to the state to be used for programs that if we're allowing people to come in, that we should be protecting our border, because in essence, it really is our property, because in some way we have paid for it.
That's actually an interesting point there. Yeah.
No, it's definitely a really valid point. And at the end of the day, my thoughts are end the drug war, open the borders, get rid of entitlements. Not exactly in that order, because if you opened all the borders and you kept the entitlements, you're fucked. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what you are. So, and again, this exact same teacher that had the same thoughts as me, we went into he texts me and he's just like, hey, I go to this, or no, I think he messaged me. He's like, hey, I go to the school, I want to help you out with your Americans for Liberty thing. And my vice president and I went in there and we spent like 4 hours talking to the dude. It was crazy. But one of the things that he said was, you know, if I am in my house and somebody comes up to my house and knocks on my door and says, hey, man, I'm really hungry, I need some food, blah, 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 of course I'm going to help him out. But, you know, once 1,000 people are knocking on my door, I can't do that. So, you know, it's a little bit more of a statist kind of explanation, at least from the way that I just explained it. He had kind of had a better way of explaining it, but it really did make a lot of sense, because you can't get rid of one without the other. Yeah. I mean, I was talking to my dad and my grandfather like that, because it's literally the libertarian progression, because my grandpa's like relatively Republican, my dad is like an Alex Jones listening Republican, and then there's me. So I told them that I don't believe that humans can be illegal, and they like gasped at me. But I was just like, they can't. Now, of course, we have to be smart about this. We can't just get rid of borders and continue with entitlements, and we have to be smart about it. But you know,
I think I saw a great tweet from my friend Brian last night when he was talking about the debates, and he was saying that people on both sides of the issue, when they're talking about borders, even a lot of libertarians, no one's talking about the real issue, which is private property borders. Everyone's only focusing on government borders, when, you know, from a libertarian perspective, I mean, personally, I'm for open government borders because I don't recognize government borders, but we have to stress the importance of private property borders, because that's what's going to fix all the ills in society.
Exactly.
Well, this is where we all agree that certain things need to change, and the system's fucked, and I mean, we're going to sit here and we're going to talk until we're blue in the face. But I was just telling you guys, is what I'm starting to really get into is to look at how pragmatically this is going to be able to work, because I don't foresee besides a bloody outrage by the people, this is ever going to work. So, and I don't see that happening. I don't see a revolution like that ever happening. So what I'm looking at now is how are we actually going to change things, because they are so far past changing them at the national level.
Yeah. Well, what's going on, Kush? We got our buddy Kush joining in here.
No, not a whole lot. Finally got some time to be at home, so
Awesome. Glad to have you and your wisdom on tonight.
Yeah, what's going on,
you
man?
guys, not a whole lot, but please continue on. I'll jump in when I get caught up with the conversation here.
So I think
definitely.
I think what James was just talking about was a good segue into secession, because I know we want to talk about that tonight. So how do you see it being possible for societies to secede, or even states to secede, James? And how do you think? How soon do you think it's possible?
Well, this is why I'm so excited. This is why I can watch the Democratic debates and the Republican debates and not cry myself to sleep at night. Is because I'm actually, the warrior in me is a little happy that this is happening, because it's going to get so messed up. I always say, my line is that when northern laws come to southern states, that's when people are going to wake up.
Mm.
When they're enforcing the same laws from New York and Alabama, that's when people are actually going to wake up. When the federal government gets so big that there are no real states' rights anymore, and there are no divisions between having conservative states and democratic states, because that's where the presidency's headed. It's headed to a kingship.
Yep.
So as I see that, I also recognize that 1 in 4 people in every state want their state to secede.
Really? I didn't know that.
I forget the source. I think it's Reuters that was the one that actually brought it up.
Wow.
Well, it doesn't sound as crazy when you phrase it like this. Half the Republicans want their state to secede.
Exactly.
But, yeah. So, I mean, I definitely understand that. And a lot of people, my friends, I had a couple of my friends with me trying to get that ballot initiative going for recreational marijuana, which we'll bring up later. But a friend of mine who is pretty apathetic, but I'm kind of turning him on to the ideas and things like that.
Can you
his
imagine?
girlfriend were helping him. What's that?
No, keep going. I'm sorry. I didn't catch it.
But he asked me, so why, if you don't want this system to be a thing, if you don't want to support it, why are you supporting this legislation? And I said, because it's going to show people that a state can run itself outside of the federal government. Now, of course, I'm not for any kind of state. I'm not for any kind of rulers. I'm not for any kind of, man over man. But I would much prefer a federalist kind of constitutionalist state than what we have now, of course. So, and if you want to be realistic, that's probably the only kind of thing that we'll reach in our lifetime, short of maybe secession.
Yeah.
But you gotta recognize that, and especially, you also have, you're not going to be locking people up for possessing a plant anymore. But we'll get into that later.
Yeah, we were actually talking about. I appeared on the Seeds of Liberty podcast a week ago, and we were talking about the same. Well, we got into is we were talking about gun control and everything, and one of the guys on the show, Dave, he was saying this, what James was saying, how conservatives have drawn this line in the sand when it comes to their guns and their constitutional rights, and once the government is going to breach that and the northern laws come to the southern states, that's when they're going to walk past that line in the sand. And so he was kind of saying that we will probably one day see Texas be the first state to secede, and the United States cannot survive without Texas in the Union. They cannot thrive without all that tax revenue from the oil.
Well, they can't survive. They can't survive at the level that they're going. I think the United States would be fine if they cut back, and they would be forced at that point.
I think they get at least like half of their taxes from Texas. I've read.
Well,
maybe,
yeah, Texas would have
more.
Texas would have, I think, the 7th largest economy in the world if it seceded.
Yeah, the only problem with that, though, that I see is if Texas were to secede, you would have so many people, that these Stockholm Syndrome people, that would see that as like an act of treason and all this shit, and not just people wanting to be free. But the problem is they're not going to see this and say, okay, now we got to scale back. They're going to see this and say, we need military action, and that's what I'm scared of.
Well, here's the deal: is I mean, we all know a lot of, especially Justin, and I mean, we all know people in the military. We all know how people in the military think. A lot of them are pro-Constitution. A lot of them are pro-gun rights, and they're down to fight, not for the government. And they're the first ones to bash the government. I love talking to members of the military because they're always the first ones to say, "I can't believe."
They're the ones getting fucked.
Yeah, exactly. So what I'm so happy about is people are bemoaning the fact that society is getting really soft and political correctness is coming in, and you can't say this, you can't do this. You know how great that is for secession? Can you imagine if a county, just a county in Florida, said, you know what, we don't want to be a part of the union anymore. So now people with their Second Amendment rights are defending this county. You really think Obama's going to send in the military to take over that county? It's not even close. It's not even close to the way it was.
But you know what?
I'll be there in a week.
He doesn't need the military to walk in because he has all these federal. The Department of Education has their own military. That's who's going to send in.
Well, at the end of the day, you know how the media would cover that? The way they covered, I don't know if you guys saw with the Bundy Ranch and all that. That was that wasn't even close to secession, but that was just private property rights. You see how many people showed up within the first couple hours after?
The militias responded swiftly into that event, and the federal government, I forget what was it? Not BLM, the other one that they got out there, or whatever. I forget the federal agency, but they were literally scared shitless. Like, InfoWars reported that thing, and they had guys on the ground, and they had cameras, and there was also independent reporters with their cell phones and shit, and you could just see the feds were just over there shaking, like they didn't know what could possibly happen. They just knew that the people weren't on their side and that it could get real bad real quick. Luckily, it didn't go anywhere, but
it had the potential.
Yeah, but the grassroots people who understand freedom and liberty came out and gave their support to the Bundy Ranch and that whole incident, and that's why the MSM didn't say shit other than they talked a little shit about it here and there. We're like, oh, this guy won't pay his fucking taxes, da 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 da.
They made the issue about him being racist. They turned it away from being a private property rights issue into an issue about race, which is what the liberal media always does.
Can you imagine? I mean, during the Revolutionary War, before the Revolutionary War, all it took was the Boston Massacre. That's what really spring-loaded the colonies. That's what really spring-loaded support. It was the death of 4 people. They called it the Boston Massacre. 4 people died. Yeah. I mean, can you imagine if shots were fired at the Bundy Ranch, which had nothing to do with secession, but imagine a county tries to secede and shots are fired? You know how many members of the military, how many members of the Oath Keepers, how many members of all these groups like Liberty Hangout would be there?
I'd find a way to be there.
I'm going to play devil's advocate here, and what I have to say in response to that is that they're already getting away with this. They do it in discreet ways. They call it law. The thing, as much as the conservatives support their constitutional rights, they are always on the side with law enforcement, and so they say nothing of the fact that cops kill 1,000 Americans. That's 1,000. That's how many Boston massacres every single year. They say nothing about it.
You know who's getting slammed the most now by the mainstream media? You know who's getting fed up?
Cops.
Law enforcement. And you know what? And I was talking to somebody the other day because I'm trying to talk to this girl. She's really hot, and her stepfather is deputy.
You're on record saying that.
Her stepfather is the deputy in my county. And we had lunch the other day, and she goes, well, you hate cops. And she goes, I see all your posts and everything. I said, I don't hate cops. I just think they're victims. They're forced to enforce these bullshit laws by politicians they don't respect, and now they're out on the streets getting killed for it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, law enforcement, I think, would have, if anything, they would have the people's backs who are doing everything which is naturally and constitutionally protected.
I would like to think that would happen, but there are a couple of things that might suggest otherwise. And I do think that's a pretty valid point, definitely. But part of the problem is you've got, and it's something that I posted on my personal page not too long ago, and I said, when you create a position in society where you're above the law, you are going to attract racists. You are going to attract people that want to do harm to other people. Yep. And now, I'm not saying that every single cop is like that, because I know I grew up with a really good family friend of ours was the sheriff of Brevard County when I was growing up, and of course I didn't pay attention to any kind of police violence or anything that happened there. But I know that he was a good dude, and I know that he didn't do the kind of shit that cops are getting shit for in the media. But you're still you're still upholding these terrible laws. So I agree with you and I disagree with you. I'm sitting on the fence on so many of these things, but I feel like it's kind of your right to get yourself out of it, to get yourself out of that violent system that pushes unjust laws down people's throats.
Liam, people are turning to people who respect the Constitution are turning to Donald Trump now because they have no option. Because everyone else is so corrupt that they're looking for a guy that's going to speak his mind.
Yep.
This is at the point we're at in our country, which is why I said I'm actually kind of happy that this is happening. Because at the end of the day, now people are forced to make a decision. Can you just imagine how the media would, how could you cover a county or a state that secedes and the federal government goes in and fires upon them, where you actually have civilian deaths? I mean, people would lose their shit. And that's what I want. I want this to start up. I want to get going here.
Governments can't get away with the type of propaganda anymore with the internet. Look at I'll let you chime in real quickly, but look at the other day. I don't know if you guys saw Adam Kokesh. He posted about 5 videos yesterday. The TSA stole his cell phone, and now that's all over the web. It has thousands of views. Okay, so what happened was every time he flies, he films a TSA just because he tries to make a point that it's his First Amendment right. The government's always pointing cameras at me, so now I'm going to point the cameras at you. So he's at the TSA checkpoint just filming, and so they ask him, "Sir, put it away. There's federal regulation. You can't do this here." And he's like, No, I have a First Amendment right. The First Amendment applies here. And they're like, "We're going to call the cops." Yeah, call the cops. They're going to tell you I have a First Amendment right to do this. And so they call the cops. The cops don't show up, and so they keep harassing Adam. They're like, "Yeah, we're going to pat you down. We're going to pat you down again." Adam's like, "How many terrorists have been caught by the TSA?" And then they're like, "We're about to catch one right now." And so Adam goes downstairs, and then he comes back up, and he's filming the guy again to basically shame him. And then the TSA, they steal his phone, on camera. And then I don't know how he got it back.
That's so
right there. They can't get away with anything anymore.
That dude has the worst relationship with the TSA. It's like a bad
It's perfect. I'm surprised he's allowed to fly, honestly. But James, what I was saying is, I understand the point that you're trying to make with it. Is cops they're in the same boat as the rest of Americans. They're kind of indoctrinated into thinking that certain laws are just and certain things need to be, violently pushed down people's throats. So I totally understand the fact that a lot of them just don't know what exactly they're pushing. So I would hope that if something like that happens, people, oath keepers, would say, okay, enough is enough, I'm done. But a lot of people are
good
really
cops.
worried. I do.
Oh, good. I mean, there's good, they always say, there's good cops and there's bad cops. No doubt there's a shit ton of bad cops. I mean, I come from New York. I know a lot of them. I also know a lot of good cops that they don't have anything else. This is what the system has provided them with. They didn't get an education. They went to the academy. Now they have power, and this is what they're doing to feed their family. And they're victims at the end of the day.
Just imagine.
Well, go ahead.
Just imagine in a free. I know, like James is saying, they had nothing else to turn to. Just imagine in a free society how useful their services actually would be. Because
exactly,
if everyone can hire private security firm to protect their business or property, that's a hell of a lot more opportunities for defense than there is currently.
Exactly, and James, I agree with that, but I think that good cops are good people in a bad position. Not a bad position in their life, but a bad position in relation to freedom and things like that.
Here's what I see. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were.
You're good. Go ahead.
Oh, well, here's what I see with the whole police, just the whole batch of fuckery that's going on here. So you have all these police, right? You got a small group of agitators. When this small group, individuals from this small group, and they kill someone over something stupid as shit, and then it's all over the media, and then the media immediately covers up the fact that it's the state versus the individual and it turns it into a race issue. All you have going on here is you're driving a wedge between the people and the law enforcement community. And as much as I'll be the first person to tell you of my wonderful opinions about how much I don't like the police, really at the end of the day, if shit gets wild, think of how big of an ally they could be if the government wanted to take and get real crazy with shit, and we had the police on the side of the people. That would be the biggest stopgap that could possibly exist between the people and the federal government should it come down to that. Now we're talking about how you got Trump and you got Sanders, you got these demagogues up there, and you guys were speaking about earlier how, you know, people are latching onto this because these guys know how to talk. They're mixing a little bit of truth into what they're saying. Or in the case of Sanders, he's just a super hardcore leftist, and, you know, the left crowd is the dominant majority right now. The problem with that, it is a chance for opportunity, like you guys have been saying, but at the same time, it's extremely, extremely dangerous right now. This same shit happened in Germany right before fucking World War II kicked off and all that crap. And that's how Hitler came to power. You know, there was a political climate that existed, just like the one that we see every day when the leftists are jamming this fucking agenda down our throat with all this PC garbage and whatnot. So just imagine if a politician came out and was really like a strong nationalist in the case of the conservatives, or even in the case of liberalism, just someone who came out, didn't even push the liberal agenda, just spoke common sense and nothing more, and then turned around and turned out to be a Hitler or something like that. We are in a potential spot in history where you know, if we're not careful with where the country goes, we could have some extremely disastrous global consequences that people would have never seen coming, except motherfuckers who are smart enough to open a history book and read what the words say and think about it.
Well, just going on, talking about Germany, I mean, if you look at Germany when it was its most prosperous, I mean, as a landmass, it was right after the Peace of Westphalia when when it was all decentralized states, where I think there was like hundreds of different little states that came into being. After German unification, and after that, I mean, everyone followed suit after that, Italy, France, and they all became these big mega states. And then now they have all these problems. I mean, look at Greece. When was Greece its most prosperous? When it had city-states. Then it became this big landmass, and now all of a sudden it's a bankrupt, destroyed country.
Well, here's another.
It's when it goes wrong.
Here's another thing to think about too. Our money is shit. It's garbage. It's getting shittier as every single passing day because of all the bullshit that the Fed does that we all know about. But
that's
the money,
even more reason for secession.
When Hitler came to power, the money was fucked, and they had to pay out like these massively ridiculous reparations from World War I, you know, because of the Treaty of Versailles. But what he went and did is he went and made a Deutschmark. He made a currency that was backed with something. Well, that potential exists in America right now. All the president would have to do is be like, you know what, the Fed can eat a dick, and we're going to print our own money, and it's going to say the United States note, you know, instead of Federal Reserve note. And then if this person was of malicious intent, who was a scholar of history, they could realize that all they'd have to do is free the markets up a little bit, just, you know, tell the corporations to take a pass on their monopolies for a minute, and that they'll get it back in tenfold when the currency turns around, and we could still go into, you know, another period of craziness. Now, I'm not saying that no matter what happens, everything's going to be shitty. It's just very, very important to be aware of these facts and be aware that these things have already happened, because if you're not, obviously, as the saying goes, those who don't understand history are doomed to repeat it. Not that anyone here is historically ignorant, but I'm just throwing that out there, you know, just for FYI.
On the flip side of that, you also got to look at when a state like Texas seceded from Mexico, because they were first owned by Mexico, and you had the Alamo, and they seceded, and they started their own government. They coined their own money. I mean, they had a pretty viable, for the first, I think, 4 years, whatever it was, their currency was very well on the world stage, did very well. It wasn't until after they were forced into unification that really, Texans did not, they saw themselves as Texans, not Americans. That's when shit started to go wrong. Now we're faced with the problems we have now through centralization. So my point is, what I'm positing is that what we need to do is decentralize, have someone with the balls, a state or a county or some type of landmass with the balls to say, we no longer recognize you as legitimate. At that point, this isn't like an incident shooting where they can try to frame it something else. It'll take a formal declaration that we no longer recognize you as legitimate, and we are peacefully seceding from you. Now, if they are the first to initiate force after that, I don't know how you can coin it that this is, you can make it a black versus white issue or a cops versus, you know, it just couldn't.
But they'll never be able to get away with lies because the truth will seep out through social media and the internet. It just
And
spreads
there's
that
so many people that are fed up with the system. I think you'd have Republicans, Democrats that would all be saying, we want to move to Texas. All it's going to take is one. That's all it'll take, and a domino effect will occur.
You know, this is why the media and the government together are trying so desperately to get us divided, whether it's black, white, Christian, Muslim, Republican, Democrat. They want us divided so that we don't see the state for what it really is and so that we don't unite. They don't want us united because a united people is the most dangerous threat to the system.
Oh, no doubt. And this is what all I want is for people to start recognizing that secession is not only legal, but it's a very viable option.
Yep.
Very viable option, but it's not on the 3x5 card or allowable opinion like Tom.
Yeah. I think just going off of what Kush was saying about what were we talking? Oh, you were saying how a government will open up a little freedom to gain a little more power. That got me thinking here, because I really don't think the state can get away with another massive full-scale war. We prevented a war in Syria when all the truth came out. Now the truth is coming out about ISIS. And so when we talk about the state going to war to cling to its power to protect the petrodollar, do you think it's possible that the state will take other alternatives, such as maybe bringing back the gold standard or things like that?
I don't think they'd take it to such a drastic level like that, because, well, it would depend on the events that do it and how they, how they're planning on moving forward with their agenda. To use my example before, if they want to return to sound money, if that's part of their plan, they already have everything worked out, so to speak, and people would prosper off of it. But I think that the catalyst here specifically, like if this were to happen within the next 5 or 10 years, just as a hypothetical, I'm seeing a massive shift and a massive paradigm change in the way that people are beginning to view the world. People are starting to get it. There's still a lot of dumb fucking people out there, don't get me wrong. But it seems that social media is finally starting to have an effect, and all these little memes where we take all these complex issue and dumb them down into like 4 lines, so any person out there who can read can comprehend it. I think it's having a real impact, but it just all depends. And like especially recently, and now you're seeing it come out. I just posted a song by Theory of a Dead Man. They're talking about how everything is stupid and fucked up. The whole brand new season of South Park, it's all like exposing, the whole PC movement and all that shit, how it's all just garbage. So as this is disseminated to the masses, and as these trends continue, I don't see people just being like, oh, well, I've been paying attention for 15 years, I'm going to stop now, especially, when a lot of us have spent so much energy in, talking to anybody who's willing to listen, and just really trying to affect change anywhere we can. I haven't voted since, 2002 or something?
Wow.
Yeah, and I've cried on the internet, since then, and it has still been more effective than voting. But on the same note, at least in my personal life, in my interactions on social media, I try to go out and really try to not just be approach a liberal and be like, you're wrong because you're a fucking dumb fuck. I'll give them the next piece of the puzzle, whatever it is for them. But
I think you just made a good point there about how crying on the internet is a lot more effective, because a lot of statists will say, whenever I say I don't vote or I don't want to partake in politics, they'll be like, oh, well, what are you doing? Well, like you just said, by crying on the internet, if that's what you want to call it, or for other words, we are what's going on, Dan? We'll get to you in a second, but by doing what we do on the internet, we're converting people. We're waking people up to the ideology. And even just the other day, I had my neighbors across the hall here at my college. They came over and introduced themselves, and my ANCAP flag back here is a pretty big conversation starter, because everyone's like, oh, what does that flag represent? So I'll be like, how much time you got? and so they were asking about the flag, and so I went into the whole philosophy. When you just stress self-ownership, I just said to him in simple terms, in under 2 minutes, I just said to them, you own yourself. You are the rightful owner of your body. As such, you own the fruits of your labor, because your body mixes with your labor, and hence that labor is your own. It's an extension of your body. So you are the rightful owner of your body and your property. Therefore, it is immoral for anyone to use force against your property. In essence, theft, assault, and murder are immoral. And then I asked them, now, what are taxes? What happens when you go out and get a job. That's the fruit of your labor. It is your own product. So you rightfully own that. What happens with taxation? What happens when you don't pay over your product of your labor to these people that call themselves the state? They're going to point guns at you. So therefore, the state is immoral. And the girls are like, wow, that makes a lot of sense. So right there, just on that basic level, I mean, I don't know if they pay attention to politics a lot. I don't really know what their beliefs are, but just right there on that basic principle of self-ownership, they got it. That right there did more than a vote ever will do.
Just to follow up on that, because Justin, that's awesome. To follow up on that, last night after I posted all my Snapchats or whatever, I got a message from a kid I grew up with who is a part of the new Black Panther Party.
Oh,
And
goodness.
He's a Black Lives Matter. He's like one of the head guys in New York, and basically was talking to me about how much sense I was making, because before I mean, these people recognize. I mean, the Black Lives Matter movement, they recognize how illegitimate government is.
Oh yeah.
And I was talking about it because I said, I mean, because they asked that question, do Black Lives Matter or all lives matter? And I said to him, and he goes, well, Black Lives Matter. I said, well, who are you scared that is going to infringe on that? Are you scared that people are going to infringe on that, or the government? He goes, the police. So he understood. He was like, the only way we're going to be free is if we secede. He was like, if black people secede and go back to Africa. So, I mean, even people so far left as my friend are calling for stuff like secession. I mean, these people would be our best allies in something like that. So it extends
I
everywhere.
think secession would be a great thing for select states just because of the impact that it would have on the world stage. But I think in order for secession to happen, it's going to take a catalyst event of a large magnitude to get people to really go for it. Because,
We saw
Bernie
Scotland.
Sanders' presidency.
We saw Scotland go for it recently.
A Bernie Sanders presidency.
Yep, that's all it takes.
That's pretty cataclysmic.
Yeah.
I was actually thinking about voting for Sanders just because no one would crash the economy faster than him. Let's hit that reset button quick as a bitch.
But here's the thing. What if he's elected and he cowers to the powers? I don't mean to rhyme there, but because people will argue, you know, the president isn't the one who holds the real power. It's the CIA, all the shadow governments. And the president,
like the corporate interests and all that.
Yeah. And so the president is just a puppet that has to answer to them.
Yeah, I think like if that happened, then it would just be the worst of all worlds, because then you don't get like all those kind of. I mean, I hate to say like left libertarian policies, like he's against the NSA and all that. Like that wouldn't happen anymore.
No, he's not.
He's not. Well, he says he's against the NSA.
I'm telling you, if Bernie Sanders becomes president, he will need the NSA to find out where all the capitalists are. He wants He wants your tax revenue more than any other tyrant. He wants to track you down.
At least at least he says. I mean, he's like, yeah. So I mean, I don't know the particulars. I just know that all those positions that he held that were like sort of good for us, like drug legalization and all that shit. Like, yeah, that would go away right away.
Definitely.
Yeah. Oh, well, I just.
He would just become a Hillary Clinton, but older.
Yeah, I just got a text. If you don't mind me chiming in, I just got a text from Mac. He was talking about Catalonia, the area where is that, between Spain and Portugal, I believe. I could be wrong. And they're trying to secede to create a more free state.
Mm-hmm.
Does anyone know a little bit about Catalonia? I don't know much about
I have no idea.
Not to Google it.
That sounds like something Mac would talk about.
Catalan? Is that what it is?
Catalonia. Catalonia.
Mac should just come on and talk about it himself, man.
Yeah, Mac, if you're listening, come on.
Yeah, come on.
Let's hear the man.
Add him to the Facebook Messenger group, and hopefully
he probably knows more than a
lot
of us on here.
Come on, Mac. Come on and talk about Catalonia.
Yeah. But no, yes. Well, while we're waiting for him, hopefully he will come on. Something really close to what happened to you, Justin, happened to me. Except it was out of some real shit throwing stuff. So I like a page on Facebook called "I'm Tired of This Shit, I'm Moving to Asheville," right? And it's basically like a group of libertarian people that believe that doing kind of like a free state thing, but on a smaller scale in Asheville, North Carolina, which is where I'm from. So I thought that was really cool. So I'm like, well, shit, I'll click on it. And actually, I didn't even know that it was a libertarian thing until like a month or so in, when they actually started posting stuff. And I'm like, this is amazing. And of course, as soon as after I left, I found out that there's all these like crazy like anarcho-communist communes, which I would have loved to just visit and pick their brains. And there are so many anarcho-capitalists. And by the way, James, if you want to read a book, Spontaneous Order, it's by a dude called Chase Rachels.
I just purchased that.
Dude, Chase Rachels is my boy.
He is a friend of mine. He's from Asheville. So I thought that was pretty cool. So I decided, I mean, it's like $12 on Amazon, so I decided to buy it. I still haven't fucking opened it, but I'm excited to read it. Yeah, but
I got over here on my desk somewhere.
Yeah, but anyways, So the page posted, I believe it was a picture of Bush, Obama, Trump, and Bernie. And over their faces says, same shit, different tyrant. And I'm sure you guys have probably seen it, the amount that you guys spend on Facebook, just like me. And this dude, John, with a name that I can't even really pronounce on the end, he's a black dude. You look at his Facebook, he's like the kind of guy that posts like Obama memes and shit like that, and he's really not political at all. And he made a comment and said, I don't know why you guys are talking so much shit about Obama. I get free health care. He killed Osama, all this other stuff. And I was a little bit inflammatory towards him, but not nearly as much as I was, or as much as I regularly are, because I realized that that's no way to gain any kind of, friend or any friend of the movement. So I was literally just asking him some stuff. I was just like, so why do you think that it's moral for the government to take money from me and give it to you? And just things like that, just picking his brain.
I think you should break it down and say, why is it moral for individuals?
Yeah, and
I just saw an interview online today from the 1980s where someone, from the interview, I kind of gauged that the guy interviewing Bernie was a volunteerist, because he was saying, is it moral for an individual to use force against another person who has not initiated force against him? And Bernie kept evading the question because he was like, oh, are you insinuating that in every instance the government is using force against people? And then the guy was like, and so Bernie said, are you insinuating this? And the guy's like, no. And he's like, well, help me see some clarification. I am not understanding you.
He is
and so the
entirely
pro force.
And so the interviewer said to Bernie, he was like, so if no individual has a right to use force against another against an innocent person, how can you delegate rights you don't have to other people? And then Bernie was like, oh, I need to go. I need to go vote, because that's what representatives do. We vote because I represent the people.
And something about the people, something about the collective, something like that.
One of my favorite things to ask, and I believe I asked this guy, and I said, so at what point is taxation theft? And I love that, because just stating that taxation is theft, people are going to be like, oh, he's a fucking kooky tea partier. But just say, at what point is it theft to you? And I really, if you get somebody with an open mind, which is really rare, they're going to tell you, and you're going to say, so why is it at that point? And why can't I just take some of your money? But so this happened, right? And this guy kept calling me a faggot and all this other shit, and he's like, get off my post, cracker, and like calling me KKK. And it was crazy, because I didn't say anything.
Why does that sound so much like a Democrat?
Yeah, but I didn't say anything. I said nothing inflammatory towards his race, anything like that. Yeah. The only thing that I said was that I disagree with the fact that, and I take offense to the fact that you are okay with, and you're bragging about the fact that you have people with guns come steal money from me and give it to you. So he messaged me, and he said, dude, I don't know what you're talking about, and I don't want to sound ignorant when I say this, but can you enlighten me? I'd like to know more about why free healthcare is a problem. And I was busy at the time, so I said, give me a minute. And he said, I apologize for my derogatory words. And I'm like, what a fucking, just flip. I'm like, dude, what?
Damn.
So that's what being respectful towards people on the internet gets you.
Quick side
Just
note,
a little
every
lesson.
1 in 1,000 people.
I don't know if you guys know this, but the GoFundMe that you started, Chris Cantwell.
Just passed $100, baby.
Yeah, he just posted it. Well, I guess it was 5 hours ago, apparently, according to my feed. But I just seen it. But he posted it. And it's got 80 shares off his shit already.
Right.
Oh my
on,
god! Can't well.
That's probably where Walter Block
Dude,
came
we're
from.
going big.
Yeah, Dan, did you hear that Walter Block reached out to James because I guess Walter Block went to libertyhangout.org and we have James's email listed in the About Us.
Oh my
That's
god!
fucking
wow,
awesome.
Are you
That's
serious?
perfect.
That's so awesome.
Dude, Justin, you need to call up your buddy Adam Kokesh and get him to shit.
Yeah, dude, let's get him on the show, dude. I'd love to talk to him.
I fucking wish we could. I doubt that would happen though. He's too busy.
We probably
he's
have to
busy.
find it out.
Yeah. Well, no, and anyway, so it went on. And
Yep.
I said, it's fine, man. People throw shit on Facebook all the time. But he said, okay, thanks for understanding. You speak as though you know a great deal about politics and I'm interested. So I said, you're good, no worries. I'm out at the moment, so give me a minute, blah, blah, blah. And so, of course, I led off with this because it's the exact same thing that Adam Kokesh does to people. So as an individual being, you'd like to believe you're free, right? And he said, I would. I believe I am. And I said, well, there's a lot of evidence to say otherwise. There's plants you can't smoke or possess unless you're a certain person in a certain place. You're not allowed to protect yourself with a firearm unless you've never gotten in trouble, and you shell out some money to get a doctor to prove you're not crazy so they can put you on a list. And that's only if you're 21 and up and you're not in college like I am. And because of this, you're supposed to rely on a group of people that are above the law to protect you. They might not like the fact that you're black. They might not like the fact that I don't agree with involuntary taxation. Too bad they have a monopoly. And the big thing with volunteerism, because I actually told him, I said, Google volunteerism. That's the last thing I said to him.
That's the name of my wireless router.
Yeah. But I said, that's perfect because I'm going to do that from now on. I said the big thing with volunteerism is keeping everything voluntary. I don't like war. I don't like cops. I don't like drones killing innocent people on the other side of the world. But I'm forced to pay for it. How's that moral?
And then they're like, oh, my bad. But then they're like, my mind is blown.
Yeah. But he said the letter O ... So that's where all the taxes from our work checks go. He said, so that's where all the taxes from our work checks go. And I'm like, God, I've never met somebody so apathetic in my life. But I said, yeah, man, most of it goes towards the military. People like to defend it by saying they're defending our freedom, but why do they have to go overseas to do that? We're all over here. But he said, makes sense. Thanks, man. I got a question. Can I ask you anything else about this whenever? And I said, yeah, totally. But I had already been writing a novel about why healthcare is bad and why it's bad for the economy and why creating a monopoly is going to make prices go up. What's up?
You should share it on the site when you're done.
I was thinking about it. I actually ended up friending him on Facebook, so I might I might send him a message and just be like, hey, would you be okay with it? But we'll see.
Yeah. I was saying what you wrote about healthcare. It doesn't have to be the conversation.
Yeah. Go ahead.
That you should keep private.
Yeah.
Salute to you, Liam, for having the wherewithal to deal with a situation like that so calmly and so eloquently, because it's really hard, speaking from personal experience, to keep everything kind of level-headed. And also,
it's difficult.
And also salute to that kid, I mean, for having an open mind like that, because that's so rare these days.
Well, this is the thing. He's not a fucking kid. He's 25 years old. And I respect him even more for that.
Yeah.
So he's thought X for... How long do you think he's actually given a shit about politics? At least for the past 7 years. A lot of people that are of that frame of mind, they got into it when Obama got elected, right? So, actually, was he? He probably was just old enough to vote for him. But, so I'm sure he got in at that point, and, he's been a big supporter. Just like, if you go into basically any poorer majority black city, you're going to hear a lot of people that support Obama, but they don't know why. And it's just how it is. So I respect the shit out of that dude for saying that, but I posted on New Gateway about it, and I did that because it's secret, and I also did it because originally I was posting because he was being an asshole, and I always post when people are assholes because I don't care about their fucking privacy if they're calling me an asshole and saying, oh, I don't care, it's not theft, blah, blah, blah. But I posted just a little thing afterwards because I think somebody else told me something about morality and legality, and I just posted, I don't do what's legal, I do what's moral. That's all I said on my Facebook status. And he said, learning, Liam, thanks, dude. And I about cried. I'm like, yes, fucking thank you. Because he's really understanding, and he's taking a step back, and he's just saying, maybe I've been thinking the wrong thing for a while. So I really respect that, man. Because, like, I'm so stubborn that I am surprised that I'm at this point now. I mean, I can kind of see that, like, generally relatively intelligent people, they'll get to this point. They'll say, like, okay, so not really moral to tax people. It's not moral to do this, not moral to do that, and they'll get to that point. But I was still so goddamn stubborn. I've been stubborn my entire life, and if my mom is watching this, she is nodding her head. Yes, he's been so stubborn his entire life. So I don't know. Maybe anarchism is just an extension of how stubborn I am, and I'm just like, no, everything's actually man.
There will be no.
And maybe we're all so stubborn, and maybe that's why. Maybe we're all just children, and we'll be Democrats in a couple of years. But right now, I really do think what's moral is what's right. So I'm so happy that dude reached out to me, and now we're friends on Facebook. And I'm every once in a while, if I think something, I'll just message him and say, hey, what do you think about this? Blank.
That's what I say is that I think as libertarians, we always have to have, especially anarcho-capitalists, we always have to have our, I don't want to say catchphrase, but we have to have something ready. When people ask us what we are, because people always ask me, what are you? Who do you vote for? And what political party do you align with? I always have I always say voluntarist or anarcho-capitalist or libertarian, but then they say, well, what do you think about this? And I always have like this phrase, kind of like that, the Kokesh 1 minute, freedom in 1 minute type. You got to have a sort of like knife to come out with and just stick in them.
Yeah, because I've been doing I try to explain it so many different ways. It just seems like people just think you're stupid or something like that because you don't explain it fully in detail, or you'll explain something that doesn't need to be explained really, and then you'll not explain something else that's really crucial. So I kind of agree with you there. You need just something, boom, catches your attention, gets it all.
I'll tell you. Yeah, and I'll agree with that, and I'll say that I'm in a speech class right now, and I posted on that page. Every time I have a class that just says, okay, you choose the topic, it's always going to be something like freedom, anarchism, drug war, welfare, minimum wage, something that I really give a shit about that I can really rail on. But the problem is, I'm in this class, and it's called something speech, whatever, but I had to choose not an argument, but just a topic. And I had to recite a 5 to 6 minute speech about that. And this one was informative, and then there's also going to be another one about the same topic. It has to be the same topic in a couple of weeks. That's persuasive. And I wrote the informative one, and I found that it was just really, really difficult to get, because of course I chose anarchy. I didn't even say that, or voluntarism. And it was so difficult to get my thoughts together because it's so different and it's so huge.
Yeah, it's very complex.
And it was really cool because
I think it's very simple, actually. We have the most principled, and I mean, a lot of people like to say, oh, life isn't black and white, politics isn't black and white, but it's as simple as you're either free or you're not. Yeah. I really think the message is that simple.
But you can say that till your face turns blue, but a lot of people aren't gonna jive with that. And that's the problem. Yeah. So,
but I think when we keep the message as simple as possible and just try to work out all their moral inconsistencies, I think that's what really helps them. When you were talking about from your experience, you asked your friend, at what point does taxation become theft, or something? I forget what exactly you said.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What I like to do is, I'll reverse the question. I'll say, at what point does theft become moral? I'll say, let's say one person demands your money at gunpoint. That's theft, right? Yeah. What if 2 people? Theft. 10 people? Theft. 100, 1,000, 1,000,000. Still theft, right? So why is it that once it gets to the magical 51% mark, you're saying it's no longer theft? How can you consistently hold this view here?
Yeah, because people have government. Yeah, people have this idea that authority makes it official or something like that. You know what I mean? If some guy has a badge, I mean.
I think we can really help the argument. I plan on making a YouTube video soon. I think I'm going to use a whiteboard to draw it out. It's going to be called "There's No Such Thing as Government," and I'm just going to draw circles around government. There's 3 entities that people typically think exist in our culture: government, business, and society. And so I'm going to draw 3 circles: government, business, and society. And I'm going to draw little dots inside all of them to represent all the people. And so I'm going to start by talking about society, and how society has already said that it is wrong and immoral for one person to initiate force against another person here. And we would agree the same with business. That when it comes to government, we somehow say that this bubble has the right to initiate force against this other bubble. And so what happens when I erase the circles and all you see is the little dots? You see it's just individuals using force against others.
Right.
And
That's a
there's
simple,
no such,
smart idea.
there's no such thing as government. There's no such thing as business. There's no such thing as society. They're only individuals acting on their own accord.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just socially constructed to like think of collectives, but that's a whole different thing.
Exactly. Yeah, and there's absolutely, and that's the thing is, there's absolutely nothing wrong with a collective. It's just involuntary collectives that's an issue.
Yep.
So, you can be as communist as you want to. You can have a family where you're the husband and there's a wife and you've got kids and you give X amount of your income towards the kids' welfare because you care about them.
As long as it's like voluntary.
Yeah, but as soon as somebody puts a gun to your head and says you got to do this, you got to do that, then it's immoral. So you can be as communist as you want to be. You can be as like that as you want to be. And that's the problem. Like whenever I hear somebody talking about collectivism, socialism, communism, I'll always just say, why don't you just advocate for voluntary communism, voluntary collectivism, and all this other shit? And they'll give me all the reasons in the world, but at the end of the day, they're fucking lazy.
It's because it's because it's not as competitive too. But that's like a whole nother different thing. But like, they know that if they were to be in a society with capitalism and communism, like the capitalism would just overtake it because it's more efficient and effective.
That's true. But I mean, there are socialists. Go ahead.
Well, hold on one second. Do you actually think that, Dan? Because they see they see the world completely opposite of that, and they think that capitalism is what's destructive.
Well, yeah, but like they know at a fundamental level, like I don't think they really can believe that governments can create like iPhones and stuff like that. I mean, like governments have created some good technology, but nothing like really innovative and nothing that would like push the brink,
When was the last time you wanted a French phone or a fucking Swedish car?
Hey, government other than fucking spend money.
They have a lot of money to spend. Yeah, that's why.
Did you guys want to?
A lot of money.
Since I want to try to wrap up at 10 p.m. here, did you guys want to move on to abortion real quickly, so we can get our last few topics in?
Yeah, abortion, sure.
All right, James, lead the way here.
I actually have to go in a little bit, but I
get your spiel in.
I don't really. I mean, I think anyone, if you want to follow me on Facebook at James Chalemi, there's a lot of stuff that I have. I'm always posting about abortion. I think the argument is usually made that it's a religious argument, and being as a non-religious person, it doesn't really uphold with me. Especially me, I went to a Catholic school, and Catholics are always talking about the right to life. If it's my understanding, no Catholic or Christian, for that matter, has ever spoke about a right to life. If anything, life is a gift from God. So if that's the position that you hold, that is a very good position to be as a faith-based belief. Coming from a more secular position, I put it more in line with the property rights argument, that you're not able, especially as a law student, you're not able to eject someone from your property legally or morally without first making sure they have a chance at life or giving them some type of segue into safety. Abortion does neither of those. And it puts people in a vulnerable position, and you are no longer allowing people to have a chance to continue the life that was aforementioned. So that's my 2 seconds on it. I wish you guys the best in the rest of your conversation. I actually have to go educate a socialist. So I will see you soon, and good luck, guys.
All right, thanks for coming out tonight, James.
Anytime, man.
All right, so for anyone watching who isn't familiar, James, he actually made a video a couple weeks ago about abortion, and he challenged pro-choicers in which he said, let's say I have a boat, and I consent to taking you on my boat. We go out to the middle of the sea, and then I decide while you're on my boat, I don't want you on my boat anymore. So what do I do? I throw you overboard, and you drown. And you come back to shore, and the cops are waiting for you. Is that not murder? So that's really the whole issue when it comes down to abortion. What do you guys think?
So
yeah, I'm really flip-flop. No, go ahead. I was just going to say I'm really flip-flop. I always change my mind about this, so I want to hear your guys' opinions.
Well, I mean, personally, morally, I don't think that I would be able to live with myself if something like that happened in my life. But again, everyone here has a penis, so we're kind of, I don't want to sound SJW, but we're kind of in a place where we can't really talk about it because we're not experiencing it. So you got to keep that in mind. But James's argument is a really good one. The only problem with it is, like a lot of arguments against abortion, which I'm pro-life, but there are holes in the argument. So a lot of the arguments against abortion are hinged on the fact that, okay, a fetus is a human life, and that's where the big argument lies. So you can talk until you're blue in the face about how, if I throw you off a boat, I'm a murderer. If a woman aborts her child, she's a murderer. But if somebody who is pro-abortion doesn't see the similarity or the analogy, or doesn't understand that for some reason the clump of cells that is the fetus compared to the clump of cells that is a human, whatever magic makes that a difference, I don't understand. But if they don't see like a similarity, then it's not going to hold up. Now, that's still one of the better arguments that I've heard, and that's part of the problem, and that's part of the reason that this argument is never going to get solved by anybody, is because it's literally people have a fundamental difference in definition, and that's what a lot of problems that we have. Like,
I think what sucks.
Go ahead.
I think what sucks when it comes to debating the issue is that you can't really have an honest conversation because people just get so emotional about it. They think that if you take a pro-life stance, you're somehow shaming any women who may have gotten abortions. There very well are a lot of pro-lifers who do that. And I think if you're going to shame, that's very destructive. That's not what it's about. It's about observing and having empirical evidence of an observable universe and trying to find an objective truth. And so I think that if we can emphasize that, and I think also if we can empathize with the women who may have had abortions, be like, yeah, I understand your struggle. I empathize with you 100%. That's got to be a very difficult thing to go through. But if we're going to look at empirical evidence here, and assess, okay, like if it's a human when it comes out of the womb, then how is it any less of a human 1 minute before when it's inside the womb? Or what about 1 day before? What about 1 month before? What about 2 months before? Is it any less human? At what point does it somehow magically morph into a human? And so a lot of libertarians and ANCAPs, I'm actually surprised that there's an overwhelming amount of pro-life ANCAPs. But
and atheists too, atheists pro-life ANCAPs.
Yeah, but a lot of people drive the issue that if you're pronounced dead when your heart stops beating, then can't we say that life begins when your heart starts beating?
Yeah, and if you're debating with a statist, you can also talk about the fact that if a pregnant woman is killed, then that person is done for double
murder.
Yeah. So there's a lot of arguments one way or the other, but honestly, you just have to. At the end of the day, I think that it's good to, first of all, provide through church services and community organizing services and things like that, help for unwed mothers, unexpected mothers, things like that. I mean, that's the only way that you're going to do it. I mean, there's a friend of mine, older friend of mine, who's part of, I think he's a Catholic. Yeah, he's Catholic. And he's part of an organization here of like Christian people that it was a big, I don't even know, I guess think about like a church like dining hall room, like pretty big, but it was literally just pallets upon pallets upon pallets lined around the outside or the inside rather, around the edge of the room of diapers and all sorts of things like that. So the problem with pro-lifers, or at least statist pro-lifers, is that all they want to do is make it illegal and do nothing.
They just want to throw stones.
Yeah. Yep. And first of all, I don't believe in making anything illegal because it's the same thing as a drug lord. It's the same thing as guns. The only thing that you're going to do is make it more dangerous for the person who's going to do it anyway. So I don't agree with that at all. I don't care what anybody says. I do not agree with that.
If you don't have the culture behind it, like a lot of people come in and say how when what was his face, the last mayor in New York, Bloomberg. When Bloomberg banned all the sodas, they were like, oh, well, look at all the good that did for society. A lot of people stopped consuming drinks. Well, if you look at the trends in culture, the amount of consumption for sugary drinks was already on the decline. So if we see, like, if drug use is going up and government comes in and bans it, well, what's it going to do? That's going to make it more dangerous. If drug use is on the decline, well, then we can have that conversation. And so I think same thing with abortions here. If the culture isn't behind it, it's just going to make it a lot more dangerous.
Yeah, and you definitely can't dictate morality by means of the state. There's no way to do that, and it's been tried before and it doesn't work. So I totally agree with
it's an oxymoron.
Exactly, and I totally agree with that. But again, you need to be active in the things that you say. So, if you're the kind of person, like, I really do think that a lot of Republicans are Republicans because they're fucking selfish, and a lot of liberals they have a point when they say things like that. But I and a couple of other people, I mean, I'm kind of guilty of not paying as much attention to it, but a lot of people that I know, at least around this area, including Jason King, who has a homeless camp or whatever you want to call it. He's got 9 acres over in downtown Pensacola that he just lets homeless people stay at because he doesn't. I mean, there's like 1,100 homeless people in Pensacola since the last reporting, and he helps them out. And he's been trying to get tiny houses built and a big building built. But the problem is there's a lot of zoning laws that have issue. But the problem is, if you're conservative or you're fiscally conservative and you want to get rid of government programs and things like that, you can say it all day, every day, but until you start practicing what you preach and saying that, everybody says, oh, private charity is better, but they never do anything. Yeah. That's the problem that I see. So you're never going to get anybody on your side, especially when they are a liberal because they think that people are inherently greedy. You're never going to do that until you change your mind on that. And it's the same thing. Absolutely. I mean, I had a friend that was talking about, my girlfriend is a big statist, and what am I going to do? He was posted on New Gateway. I don't know if you saw that or not. That dude that posted that, he was a friend of mine through high school, and I invited him on there, and I need to talk to him a little bit. I need to get on a phone call with him and actually just talk about exactly what brought him from one thing to another. And what I told him is you have to be the best person that you can possibly think about being because you don't rely on anything but yourself to make your lives and other people's lives better.
Exactly. That's like what you said on. That's like what you said on the first podcast. If we're going to have these views, you have to be a positive role model. You can't just be that. You can't just be that anti-government person.
Yeah. Exactly. And another thing, like with Sean's Outpost is the name of the homeless camp that Jason King did, and he got interviewed by, I believe it's called Russia Today. And hopefully, I'll try to link it on the Liberty Hangout page, and y'all can watch it because it's really cool. He's an amazing speaker. He's huge into Bitcoin, and he's just an all-around awesome guy. But he practices what he preaches, and he's just probably one of the best people that I know because of it, because he just cares so much, and he understands that government isn't the way to change things. And I know a lot of people say I'm a Democrat because I care about people and things like that, but you don't ever really do anything. But I will say one thing is there's a humanist organization in Pensacola that goes to Sean's Outpost and helps things there. And I'm pretty sure the time that I went to one of their meetings, which I'm not a humanist or atheist or anything like that. I'm a non-denominational deist, if you have to call it anything. But they were talking about how, as atheists, we talk about how hypocritical the church is and how hypocritical they are because they talk about loving your neighbor as yourself and helping out the homeless and doing this, but they never do anything. They always go to church and they talk about all this shit, and then they go home and they drive past, in their fancy clothes, and they drive past the homeless people and they don't do anything.
Yeah, and you know what? I agree 100% with what you're.
Yeah, and it's definitely not everybody, and I think that they're kind of painting with a broad brush, but I do think that they have a real point about a lot of Christians. Is that they don't practice what they preach. So this humanist organization, they help out with Sean's Outpost all the time. They're trying to get a ballot initiative going to restore felons' rights in Florida because it's terrible. Like, you can't own a gun, you can't do any of this, and that's you don't even have to get arrested. You can accept a plea bargain on something you never even got actually charged for, and you can never own a gun again. You can never conceal carry. You can never do any of this Yeah.
Wow.
So they're actually, I mean, they're almost all Democrats, and they are trying to get that. And I respect the shit out of them for it. So in the same way that they do that, an anarcho-capitalist cannot be a greedy person. So I really hope that I can take that for the rest of my life and make other people's lives better voluntarily, without force, and advocate for it. And people say, how are you such a nice dude? I will tell you why. Because taxation is fucking theft, and I'm tired of people voting for something and saying, I care about people, so I'm going to vote Democrat, and then I'm going to walk away, and I'm going to turn around, and I'm going to live my life, and I'm going to turn my back on those people because apparently now they're getting taken care of, which you're not. So fuck them. So I totally... Go ahead.
Do you think maybe if when we're engaging in these conversations, if I know that I stress the importance of talk about actions more than words, instead of saying government, say individuals that initiate force. What if when we're engaging all these conversations, just to overwhelm people with some truth, what if instead of talking government, we just use these terms? So every time we talk to them, just don't even say the word government, don't even say the word taxation. Just drive home the point. Some individuals who call themselves government initiating force against others to spread the wealth. Like that's what I'm thinking of doing for my business and government paper. I'm just going to write those exact words in there instead of saying government and taxation.
The problem with that, though, is like it's like esoteric. Like I'm pretty sure we could do that with like we could get ANCOMs and like anarcho-syndicalists to agree with that, but like we couldn't. I don't think we could get statists to like get with that because like they have to.
I think we can.
They have to like get exposed to the whole like thing. They have to like understand what we're even for before we start using those esoteric terms like individuals.
It's so simple to understand.
I know,
like,
the
whole individual
there's so much
self-ownership
propaganda
argument.
that it's like it's not simple. Like it's like you've been taught. It's like you've been taught like there's an extra number or something in math.
Yeah.
Like there's like.
I hate to jump in, but yeah, we got to wrap up in the next couple minutes. I know we wanted to talk about Volkswagen. Liam, you want to tell us about that real quickly? What happened with them?
Well, I don't know. We might get into it, we might not. But it's basically
Gotta be quick.
And I didn't even have the chance to look up any of the hard facts on it. But I remember reading, for anybody that's not versed up on it, I like cars, and I follow a lot of things, and I really like diesel cars because they're a hell of a lot more economical. I was in Ireland last year visiting some of my family, and my cousin actually worked for Honda, and he had a diesel version of the exact same car that I drive over here and get 27 miles to the gallon to, and he clocked it in at getting 69 miles to the gallon. Why is there a difference? Because of EPA regulations. And people talk all about how EPA regulations keep the environment clean. The EPA regulations do all this other stuff. Let's ignore that.
They're the biggest polluters
in the that shit-filled river in Colorado. Let's just talk about the fact that over double the amount of fuel is being taken to run my car than the one over there in Ireland. Its counterpart. Even though there isn't a sock in the exhaust like there is over here, which allows it to run a little bit smoother and not have to work against itself and basically die after only 150,000 miles. Things like that, they work against themselves, and they do that because they know that they can create more of a dependence on oil and more of a dependence on this and that and more of a dependence on buying the government motors cars and GM and things like that. And that brings me to the hypocrisy of what happened with Volkswagen. Is they got fined, I want to say it was something like 10 times as much as GM got fined when some faulty ignition switches killed like over 100 people. And I guarantee it's because GM got bailed out by the government and they didn't want to admit that they did something wrong, which is insane. So I mean, it's just yet another reason that even the things that we talk about. Okay, war kills people, the police kill people, this and that kills people. Like there are guns being fired at people, and you and I and everybody else paid for those bullets involuntarily. But there are other things that are killing people because of government neglect. Just like that river in Colorado.
Amen to that. And we're about to wrap up here, and I think we can maybe that'll be a good segue for the next episode we do. If maybe we do that next week or the week after, maybe we can talk about how a lot of people stress the importance of protecting the environment. That's obviously a very good issue. And I think we can talk about how private property rights really solve that easily. And so that's probably something we can talk about next time. Anyway, for anyone listening, I thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you check out libertyhangout.org for some awesome liberty-minded materials from a great lineup of writers. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel below, Liberty Hangout. Like our Facebook page, Liberty Hangout, and follow on Twitter at Liberty Hangout. Have a good night. We'll see you next time.